Welcome, Allie. I'm so excited to have you here today on the Be Create Inspire podcast. And we got to peek into your brain and how everything works.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. We're going to have fun.
Yes. So I remember when we were in a group together, and this was like 2017? It's been years.
Yeah, something like that. Maybe even earlier.
Maybe. Not too much earlier, because I started this online world in 16. So
okay.
This group 17.
Yeah, nice.
And this is when you were kind of like just starting your tiny offer like empire.
Yeah. I don't think it even existed yet when we first started that group. I didn't even have anything yet at that point. I had a dream, but that was about it.
Which I think it would be great to talk about because, I think a lot of us entrepreneurs, we get stuck in the dream phase, and then it's implementation phase or execution phase is when all havoc breaks loose. So we're like, I don't know what to do.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about you, because I think your story is it's really fascinating. And I want people to see the evolution, right? This is the essence of this podcast. It's like, who are we being? What are we creating? And how is that impacting and inspiring the, maybe it's a mini world or big world, depending on reach.
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't get to talk to people that often that were in the room in 2016, 2017, because I would be standing in front of the stage or not the stage, but in front of the room, and I'd be overthinking my words, and I wouldn't have any confidence in what I was saying. Like even my posture and my energy was different than it is now, and not like when you started talking, I was like, oh yeah, we're going to go there, aren't we? And I was like almost a little embarrassed, but it's like, that was part of the journey. That was part of the story. And so my story, I started as an entrepreneur probably back in 2012, officially out on my own, doing freelancing. I was building websites for people. I was doing social media management. I was only charging $250 a month to do everything for people, basically be there on call for them anytime they needed anything for very, very low prices every single month. And I was getting burned out. There was a lot of people pleasing. There was a lot of no boundaries. Like I just wasn't loving having my own business. It seemed worse than having a job just because I wasn't good at managing that stuff. I hadn't learned the skills yet. So probably around 2017, 2018 is when I started feeling like there was something more than just freelancing or just kind of having 20 different bosses instead of just one different boss. And I started learning about this online space, and I wanted to coach, and I wanted to do consulting and even creating digital products and group coaching programs, like all the stuff that we see online now. And it took me probably a good 5 years to actually create anything of substance, anything that people wanted to buy. So it was a lot of what I've learned to get to this point was listening to what people actually wanted and learning how to hack my productivity so that I could get it done and start selling things and focusing more on the selling than just the perfecting on the back end, which is what I was doing before. So I went from once I finally figured this out and I started selling my own products, I went from making probably about $30,000 or $40,000 a year to generating over $5 million in revenue in my business over the last 5 years or so. So it was a really big shift for me. It happened really fast once it started taking off. And even that was, a nervous system adjustment and trying to get used to the new normal. And so there were some rocky phases within that too. But it's really been an evolution, and, I've learned a lot in the process. That's kind of the long version, I guess.
Yeah, no. And, it's funny when you say that your posture and who you were was so different, because I totally resonate. I remember being in, I don't know if that was one of the masterminds that we were at, one of the retreats. And I got up to present in the middle of the room, and I just broke down, crying uncontrollably. I was like,
yeah. I don't know what it is about masterminds that do that, but yeah, same.
And the word that we're using, right, this evolution, it really is Allie version 1.0 to Allie version
probably 5.0. Yeah. There's been a lot of different versions since then.
Allies.
Yeah.
But something that you did really well, which I think I would love people to learn about, was like positioning yourself in the marketplace as the expert of the tiny offer. And I want to know the story of like how you decided that the tiny offer was the one thing, right? When we talk about the one thing, the domino, right? If I make people believe that they have to do this one thing, and you really built that belief system around it, you made the case and saying, if you do this, these things will happen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so much so that I'm in your program now. And I'm like, yes, we have to do this.
Yes, you need a tiny offer. Right. Yeah. And I remember like pre-tiny offer looking around in the marketplace and feeling so frustrated that I didn't have a thing. And I was like, if I could just find the thing, then everything would be easier. And it's like when you're trying to force it and when you're trying to find it, like I just remember obsessing over it and like feeling so distraught and like I couldn't do anything else until I knew what that thing was. And it never happened, you know, that's probably what those 5 years of like just beating my head against the wall is like I was trying to force it instead of just going out and creating things and just doing stuff. Because I didn't invent the tiny offer. I didn't know it was going to be the tiny offer. I didn't wake up one morning and say like, aha, this is the thing that I'm going to build my brand around. It happened so organically that I could have never predicted it. I could have never orchestrated it on my own. It was all my experiences, everything led, you know, everything kind of, I guess, cascaded into that being the thing where it happened because I did keep showing up and I kept trying new things and I kept getting results or, you know, adding on to my expertise and my collection of stories. And it all kind of just came together. So I think sometimes like I've coached people who are in that phase and they, you know, they haven't found like their thing they're going to be the category king of or category queen, you know, the thing that they're going to stand on and build their brand on. And it can be hard because they feel like they're almost like frozen until they can figure that out. Like I can't show up until I have the thing, but it's in the continuing to show up that you find the thing. Because my story, from transitioning to service provider to like the tiny offer queen, which I'm doing air quotes around because that's what people say. And I always think that's kind of funny. But the story is that I was still building funnels for people. And I think if anyone's in the service providing space or they've done some level of done for you work, you've worked with a client that probably wasn't the best fit, but you either needed the cash or you didn't have any other options. And excuse me, I had this client that I built a funnel for her. She launched, but she was doing the type of launches where she only showed up for that launch period and she didn't talk to her audience the rest of the year. It was like she had a 2-week launch period. She expected to make hundreds of thousands of dollars in that 2-week period. And then she just ghosted everybody for the rest of the year. And the market had shifted such that didn't work anymore. Like people wanted to hear from you. They weren't just going to show up and buy something because all of a sudden you're selling something. So I had helped her with her launch the previous year. I think she made like $150,000. This year it was almost rinse and repeat. I did all the same funnel building for her, did the same strategy, and she only made 40K. And I had charged her $6K. So she was mad at me that her launch didn't work out the way she wanted. And she was asking for a refund. And it was like, no, I did all the work. I showed up for this. I delivered. I fulfilled. I don't think I should have to give a refund. There is a contract in place. So we ended up parting ways. And then I saw a chargeback get pushed through a couple of weeks later that was going to put my account in the negative. And it was so frustrating, but I was so powerless of, you know, I could fight it. I could show the credit card company the contract. But at that point, none of it mattered because that takes such a long time period to do. So my back was against the wall and I was like, I know I want to coach. I know I want to sell products. I'm tired of working with clients that don't respect me and don't, you know, value what it is that I know I'm smarter than this is what I just kept thinking. Like I shouldn't be letting people treat me like this, but that pattern kept repeating. So I was crying to my husband and I was like, I quit. Like I'm done. Our account's going to be negative. We're going to have to tap into our personal stuff. That's not cool. And I get it. And I'm just done. And he's like, no, you're not. I know you haven't been doing what you actually want to be doing in your business. I know you haven't been fulfilling you haven't actually been trying to sell the products that you're creating and you're perfecting on the back end and you're not really telling anybody these things great. He's like, just go all in on that side of the business for 6 months. Like just talk about your products, talk about coaching, stop selling the stuff that you don't love doing, and let's just see what happens. So I found a credit card and I built this funnel and I launched ads towards this $27 product, and I was like in the corner shaking. So my account was negative. I was like, I'm going to run ads and I might lose money. I don't know what's going to happen. It's probably not going to work because it's never worked before. And then that first day, I think I spent, $30 on ads and I made $60 in sales. And I was like, oh my gosh, strangers are buying my stuff. Like, what is happening right now? They definitely bought it by accident. They're totally going to want a refund. There's no way they purposely bought it. But at the same time, I was like, okay, well, let's see what happens if I spend $60. So the next day I doubled my ads and I spent $60 and then I made $120. And then I just kept doubling it until I think it was like 10K in the first 2 weeks, 10K in sales. And I'd never made 10K in a month before, much less in a week. And I think we were at one of the events with our previous coach, Julie, and I was sitting next to her at a dinner and I was showing her my Stripe account. And I was like, do you see what's happening right here? Like, there's $10,000 in this account from the last week. This is bananas. I can't even believe this is possible. And then it went on to do 100K over the next month. And I just kept scaling it to the point where the 6K that I was going to go negative was like no longer a worry. Paid off student loans, paid off a car. Like, I just dug out of debt so fast. And so it was really mind blowing to me. But then people saw me talking about it and they were like, what is this? Like, what are you doing? What does the funnel look like? How are you setting these ads up? And people just kept asking me about it. And again, I was not ready to run a group coaching program. I was like, I'll just create a course and I'll just put it out there. And I don't want to have to talk to anybody. Like, I don't think I'm really ready to be a coach. And one of my friends ended up finding the course kind of like hidden on the back pages of my website. And he was like, what are you doing? Like, why are you not actively selling this? Why aren't you launching? Why aren't you being louder about this product? You need to do a live webinar. You need to sell it as a 5K coaching program, not this like 997 course hidden in the depths of your website. And I was like, no, I'm not doing a live webinar. Like, that's uncomfortable. I could never do that. And he helped me build the webinar, and he's like, all you have to do is show up. I'll build it for you. And of course, there was like a profit sharing agreement because that was his specialty, is building webinars and scaling group coaching programs. So again, I said yes, even though I was terrified and I didn't think I was ready for it. He really helped me step into the next level. And then we ended up selling 150K in 1 week from this group coaching program. And I was like, okay, I'm going to have to get used to showing up on Zoom calls with a bunch of people staring at me and answering their questions. And it was like, I just kept expanding my comfort zone and expanding what I was saying yes to, and being willing to do things that were really scary and felt really weird and out of my norm. And that's kind of the story of how it kept growing. But I never would have chosen that exact journey for myself or predicted it. I just kept kind of following, and I kept listening to what people were asking to, I guess, is the other piece of that. If somebody's like, what's my thing? How do I find my thing? You just keep showing up and trying different things that you are good at, and people will ask, and they'll almost guide the way for you for what you can create and what you can become known for.
Yeah, no, I love that. And if we can talk about like that place of being uncomfortable and not knowing what to do. And from what you're saying is that in the place of discomfort, this is where I live too. I'm like, oh, it's uncomfortable. This is part of the thing, right?
Right. Yes.
But like there's a fine line that you cross or you don't. And usually crossing the fine line is what makes you shift, right? It's what makes you grow.
Yeah.
So now, right, you've been doing the tiny offer queen status for a while. And I also say this because
it's weird.
I was, I was a pioneer in the yoga industry here in Miami and South Florida, especially with acro yoga.
Yeah.
And people would call me the acro yoga queen. And I always felt, I was like, I'm a queen of nothing. But thanks.
Yeah.
Right. Because I used to do the same thing. So now that you've been in this space, right, of having this notoriety, let's call it that.
Yeah.
And what are you seeing that people are having success with in terms of launching these offers? Like, what are you seeing in the market really? Because I mean, when we started, I did my first webinar and I had, 100% conversion rate. Like, that doesn't happen anymore.
Right.
So what do you think are some pieces of advice, of wisdom? I don't like advice. I like wisdom that you can share with people.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're totally right that the industry is shifting and continues to shift rapidly, especially with AI. And, like people can create anything so quickly that there's a lot more. I think people are taking a lot longer to buy. Like there's more consideration going into the buying phases. I think people have also joined other programs and gotten burned in the past. So there's almost some cynicism, and there's a lot more doubt. And I was hearing about this book. I think it was called Breakthrough Advertising. And the concept of the book is that marketing's so sensationalized, or the longer this market exists, the more sensationalized the promises get. Like, I'm sure we've seen it on our Instagram news feeds, and, like passive income promises, like you'll make this much this fast. Like the promises keep getting bigger without necessarily the fulfillment and the proof. And there's also a lot of like FTC crackdowns happening on some of these big promises. So we have to be careful of that and like not over promising. So I think what's shifting is, in all of that, I guess the underlying theme is still being a human and being relatable and connecting with your personality and the brand that you've built. There's also a huge movement of reselling other people's products. It's almost like not a pyramid scheme necessarily, but kind of the concept of like you can sell stuff that you didn't even create, but then people are being sold a promise of like, all you have to do is sell this course and you'll make X amount of money. But when there's no foundational brand, and there's no foundational, just kind of the vibe of who you are and who you want to attract, and understanding who you want to work with and what your big purpose is and all of it, I think people are kind of missing the heart of the business. So I think that's something we're going to continue to see affect sales, and the people who haven't done that work of good branding and good foundational stuff, it's going to be a lot harder to sell. You can't just put a webinar together and make some big promises and think that people are going to sell anymore.
Yeah, it's so funny, right? Like I've seen you do this as well, like the rants.
Oh, yes, there are definitely some of those. I try not to, but sometimes I just can't help myself.
I know, I get it. And it's funny, the other day I was talking to a friend of mine, and she was, asking me about some of my coaching work. And she's like, well, my friend is doing this where she created an Instagram account, and then she, shares about like basically this, it's like the affiliate marketing. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, oh, cool. Like, send me the link. I'll sign up for it. And it was like, imagine my name. I've partnered up with this guy, and look at all this stuff. And immediately I was like, girl, where are you in this? Like, this is not your languaging. You're like a spiritual, like beautiful, right. Like, and it's like this super bro language. Mm-hmm. And I don't even want to say that, because like, I feel like that's an insult to like my bros.
Right.
It was just very like robotic and super weird. And I was like, is this really what you want to promote? Mm-hmm. And she was like, and I was like, it feels like just so disconnected to who you are. So I really agree with you, like these like faceless Instagram accounts, and this, accounts that have like, I'm all about like delivering value. You're all about delivering value. And now that you see these accounts with like 100,000 followers, people that they do a post and you get like 275 comments of people saying like, yes, I want to know how to do this. But like the person on the account never really tells you how it works, what it looks like. They're just like, I used to be on welfare, and now I'm making $100,000 months and with no experience. I'm like, how dare you?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so prevalent too. Like it's all over the place.
It's crazy. So, why, not that I want to make this podcast a rant about that, but it really is like a time for us to look at ourselves in the mirror and say like, what is my purpose? Like, why am I like so mission driven? Like, why do I show up every day when things don't work? And I keep coming back at it? Why do I, have the conversations that are difficult with my partner and say, please, like, I know I can do this. And that's something that's so beautiful, I think, about you, is that like when, I've seen you coach and I've been in your courses, and you really are a champion for like mustering up the grit, like I can do this, and making it like also just feel really like no pressure, like, I don't know. I've had a lot of coaches, and I'll have to say, like, I told my friend the other day, so this kudos to you. I'm like, I really like working with Allie.
Oh, thank you.
But I really think it's because and this is almost like a, hey, you guys out there who are coaches, who are consultants, who are mentors, like, come at it from a place of heart, not just like, here's some information, like, go figure it out. So
yeah. When I think being really authentic to how you naturally show up and who you are, because for a long time, the people that I was looking up to, they're so so flashy. I'm like, from the Midwest, like, I'm simple. We spend our money on investments. We're not buying like Lambos and fancy stuff. Like, we just live a really simple life. And I think for a while I judged myself harshly for that, of like, well, I'm never going to make it in this industry because I'm not loud enough. I'm not flashy enough. Like, I'm not in people's faces. I'm not really aggressive. And I remember I found a review about myself one time online that said, her product's okay, but she's really dull. And I was like, oh, that sucks that somebody said that. And that was kind of how I saw myself, as like, womp, like, just, but then I was invited to this thing that was at Donald Miller's house, from Story Brand. And he was talking about, I'm a professor, not a performer. And I heard him say that, and I was like, wow, like, he just owned that. Like, he's not trying to be anybody else. He's not trying to show up inauthentically. And I think if I've done anything well the last 10 years is like, even I was just, maybe it was my own discomfort, but I just stayed so true to how I naturally show up that I never felt like I got pulled out of my authenticity in any way. And I think that served me well in the long run. I'm not for everybody, and some people might come into my coaching program and they might be like, wow, she's not very, like, like, ego driven or whatever it might be. People might not resonate with my style. And I think learning to be okay with that and to just continue showing up in the same way has helped me stay in it for the long run. Like, I'm not burning out. I'm not working at some crazy speed that I can't keep up with, just kind of like staying true to my values, I think has really helped. Because I've seen people burn out and get divorced and do crazy things, and like all of this, just because they've been working out of authenticity for so long. Like, it's, I think it's also really hard to stay true to yourself in this industry sometimes, when there's people who are talking about all the, the monetary things, and sometimes it's hard to not want that stuff. But I think going slow is okay too.
And I have a question, because like, when I look at your business, when I look at all your offers, all your products, like, you just came out with this Instagram thing, or then you have like if you were to like zoom out of how you work, right? And what are the ways that you do, like, make the decisions? Because I'm all about decision making, right? Mm-hmm. So you're like, okay, look at my business, because I think this is a good, again, place of wisdom for people. How do you know when it's the right time to develop a new offer? How long does it normally take for you to look at something and say, okay, this is what we're going to launch next? We know that all the assets need to be built, like the funnels, the checkout pages, the sales system. But like, how would you say, like, do you develop new offers every quarter? Is it like every couple months? How do you know when it's time to make a new one and make that pivot? I would love to like get the inside of your brain on that.
It's a really good question, and I hope I can answer it. Like, I'm true visionary ADHD as they come. And I think what has helped me stay consistent over the long run is I've always had the same core programs. I've had my group coaching program for 5 years. That really hasn't changed a whole lot over the last 5 years. I've had the same, I've had a membership for a couple years. I've had a mastermind for a couple years. So the core things have stayed the same. But then I put my creative energy into these, tiny offers, or even some of these like mid-ticket, like $197, $497 type products. So as far as a schedule on how to create those, I wish I was a little bit more regulated in that. It's so creatively inspired and organic at this point that it's like, if I see something that a lot of people are asking about, or I'm seeing a trend, I'll try to create something around that topic. But what I'm working on right now, and I just hired a new operations person that I'm really excited about, who's going to be full-time on the team. And I think she's going to rein me in a little bit, or at least like help me get this more systematic. Like I would love to teach things live at least monthly and create some kind of workshop that I sell for people to attend live and then package that up and turn it into a passive income product. Because I work so much better when I have deadlines, and because I have, probably a board of 100 ideas over there that I haven't, that have just been sitting there, and it drives me crazy that I'm not moving faster. But I think that's one amazing thing about having a team is your ideas can come to life so much faster. So that's, probably something else we could talk about for a whole hour too. But, I think something that I had to learn through necessity, just because of being busy and having all of these ideas, is minimum viable product it's kind of a hard balance between not launching garbage, but also like not spending months and months and months creating something. So, finding that balance of getting it out there, but also not perfecting it so much that you can never feel good about selling it or never feel ready to sell it. So I think that's something that tiny offers have helped me do, because I keep reminding myself, like, it's a $27 product. Like, it doesn't have to be this massive course. And that's helped me get some of these ideas out into the wild a lot faster too.
Yeah. And that's something I always tell my clients. I'm like, speed informs. Like, just put something out there and see what happens. And again, quality, right? We have the baseline, everything has quality. But the longer you take to sit and ruminate, it's it ferments. I don't know. Like, you saw that happening with my Content Pro. I was like, yeah, just launch it. I was like, fine, go. And now we get data, because if it's just sitting, whether it's in my head or for you guys listening, if it's sitting in your heart or in your head, there's no data. You're not getting feedback. You don't know if it works. You don't know if it, if people want more, if you have questions. So, I'm kind of in that mindset now of what are the least amount of things that need to happen in order for this thing to go live. Mm-hmm. And I mentioned I was at an event the other day with Rudy Maurer, and he said something that really stuck to me. He's like, if you build 10 things, probably 9 of them are going to fail. But how do you know if you only have one and that one fails and you're, basically shit out of luck?
Right. Yeah. Yep.
Go build 10 things, build them fast, and see which one works. And then maybe that's your $1 million idea. And that's, kind of what happened, a little bit with you. It was you're doing things and you're like, the tiny offer that turned into $10,000 a month or week.
Yeah.
And $1 million idea plus.
Yeah. And the part of that story that I didn't mention is the one that did start selling was the 4th iteration of that product. It just happened to be the one in the right timing for it to start working. But the first 4, I think I maybe sold one of them and spent, maybe $300 on ads and sold one. And then I turned it off. And I remember being like, this is not going to work. I remember showing, again, same coach. I showed her the screenshot and I was like, somebody bought this. Like, why did one person, this had to be a mistake again. And she's like, no, this is how funnels work. This is how ads work. Strangers will buy your products and it's okay. But it was weird for me, because I was used to only earning money from people who knew me very well, or that I had a very strong relationship with before they invested any amount of money. So I think for some people too, the ability to sell to strangers is a weird adjustment of this is not unethical, but it just can feel, I've had people in the spiritual space specifically that it feels weird to step and just almost be vulnerable and so much more visible. And when you're used to working very closely with people. So I think just some of those energetic adjustments that happen along with it too are a big, big part.
And so to start closing up this awesome episode, what would you say if, you had the you 5 years ago? What would you tell, what's the 1 or 2 pieces of hey, activate this, don't wait. What would you say are key qualities? Because again, we're talking about being, creating, to inspire. So what would you say are a couple of qualities that you would inject into your 5-7 year ago self?
Yeah, I think if I could tell myself anything, it would be test faster, or try to move faster between failures, maybe, because I would get knocked down so hard, and it would take me like 2 or 3 months to build myself back up enough to try again. And I think it's because I took things so personally when they didn't work. And it wasn't a data thing yet. It was, I failed. I created this product. Like, I'm not good enough. I suck. Like, I would make it about me and not just my ability to capture the right messaging, or, I wasn't collecting the right amount. I didn't get enough numbers, or the volume of people who saw the product wasn't even enough to make a decision on if the product was good or not. And I would just go for months in between different tests, and then I'd muster up my courage again to like, okay, I'll try it this way and maybe it'll work, and then I get knocked down again. So I think of like now I will test 4 or 5 different things all at the same time, and then I can move so much faster. And it is hard when maybe you're balancing a day job or another business, or you don't have a team to help you implement. So I think a lot of people that I've worked with are like, well, I can't sell the product until I re-record the videos from 15 minutes down to 10 minutes because they're too long. And I'm like, that stuff doesn't matter. Like, you'll get that feedback once people are in the program. They'll get in and they'll say, hey, I wish this video was more clear, or I wish it was shorter. Like, you can't really change the product until you have humans inside of it telling you, but we guess so much, and we put our focus on the back end instead of the front end of the selling and the marketing messages and the ad angles and the hooks. And, we run out of steam to even think about that stuff because we've been perfecting so much on the back end. So I think if I could give myself any advice, it would be like, focus on testing 10 different things at one time if you can, and then, use tools that make it easier if you can. Like, if you can test different pages side by side, like I know you have a SaaS solution for people where they can do that. So I think trying to make it as easy as possible to test, I think, is another thing that I would have tried to do. I don't know if that makes sense.
I love that. And if, for those of you guys who are listening, if you're like, what do I test?
Right. What's she talking about?
Test ideas, test names for things, titles, test posts. And then little by little, you start figuring out, oh, that word worked, or that image worked. And you start building, right? Putting things together.
Yeah. And I think don't be afraid to use AI too. I don't know how your audience feels about AI, but there's a lot you can do to lay the foundation. I mean, I don't think it's anywhere near where it needs to be to have the heart and the human aspect that we need to really get things selling, but it can give you a lot of ideas at least. Yeah.
Yeah. And one thing that we didn't talk about briefly, you're also a mom of 3. And, I think like sometimes we forget
right.
we forget our children.
Yeah, there's that too. Yep.
And you have a husband and you have like investments, and, I have 1, and I can only imagine what 3, mommy,
just more of the same. Yeah. Right.
So, just for those of you out there who, for a long time, I'll just share that to me was like this or that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was married, but like, I was like, oh, having a kid, that takes so much time. It's good. Like, it was like the this or that. And honestly, like looking at Allie and so many of our colleagues and so many of our friends, like, you can have it all. You can build the business you love. You can have a life that really fuels you and fills you, and do it from a place of service, but also fun. And also, I like to say sometimes selfish.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's okay, like, be selfish with yourself, and just know that like there's people like Allie, like myself here, that are like so wanting to help you, so wanting to support your vision and where you want to go. So,
and you figure it out. I mean, you figure out how to make it work in the amount of time that you have. Like, that's,
yeah, exactly.
And multitasking. I had a sales email that I had to write on Saturday, or an email that I wanted to respond to for one of the high ticket products that I have. And I had to get back to them. I brought my kids to the bounce house and I said, go bounce. And I brought my laptop and I sat there and I wrote the email, and everybody's happy. Like, it was a weekend. I didn't feel guilty about working on a weekend. They were happy as could be. We went out to lunch afterwards. So, I mean, I think it's I learned how to work so much more efficiently, probably from the beginning, because I had kids when I started, and I just didn't have any other choice than, I have this much time to get it done. I have to get this thing done. And it kept me from overthinking a lot, and kept me from, I think, spinning my wheels as much as I probably would have if I had more time to fill.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Which I'm sure you can relate to.
For being here today.
Yeah.
You're an amazing woman, and I'm just so excited to, collaborate and grow.
Yeah.
So
Thanks so
people
much for
can
having
find
me.
you. We'll put
Oh, yeah.
in the show notes. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Let's forget that part. Right. Yes.
We'll put all her stuff in the show notes. Allie's awesome on her Instagram. You also have a podcast, and I believe we'll put everything in the show notes. I don't like to ramble URLs here.
I know it's hard to find them anyway from words.
It's like Google Allie Bjerk with a BJERK.
Yeah, BJE. It's a weird one.
The jerk.
Yep, that works. That's what most people think it is. So we'll roll with that.
Well, we'll see you soon. Remember to please share, like, subscribe, download, whatever you have to do on this podcast to get it to more people, and to always be yourself. Keep creating beautiful things so we can keep inspiring the world. We'll see you guys soon.